Okay, children, today I'll be taking up your, I'll be taking up the chapter, My Childhood. This chapter talks about APJ Abdul Kalam. Okay, so in this chapter, we will, this is basically an extract from Wings of Fire, which is an autobiography written by APJ Abdul Kalam. In the previous chapter, children, a truly beautiful mind, we learned what a biography is. Okay, because a truly beautiful mind, it was an autobiography, or it was a biography of Albert Einstein. This chapter, My Childhood, it's an autobiography of APJ Abdul Kalam. Okay, autobiography, this is an autobiographical text, and autobiography means when an individual writes about his own life. So this book has been written by APJ Abdul Kalam. So Wings of Fire is the autobiography of APJ Abdul Kalam. Okay, and from here a excerpt has been taken from chapter My Childhood. Okay. Now, since it is an autobiographical text, it is in first person narrative. And how do you come to know that it is a first person narrative? Because the very starting line of the text starts with I. I was born into a middle class Tamil family in the island town of Rameshwaram. So here you can see that I starts the texts. Okay, so I, the speaker himself, is speaking about. Now, children, I'll be taking up this chapter explanation stanza wise. Okay, fine. So now I'll be taking up your first stanza. In the very first stanza, it's being spoken about that, here Abdul Kalam speaks about his family background. Okay, so he says that he was born in a middle class Tamil family, okay, in the island town of Rameshwaram in the erstwhile Madras state. So, and he says that his father's name was Januluddin. Okay, he was not formally educated. It means that he never went to school or college, but he had a huge sphere of knowledge. Okay, because he heard it from his elders and through his experience. Okay, they had and all the advances he was truly he had he had an inborn talent of wisdom, and he was very generous. He had, and his wife, that is the mother of Kalam, Ashiamma. Okay, they both complemented both wife husband complemented each other. Okay. Now again he says that he could not remember or recall a single day that how many number of people were fed on a single particular day. It means that this family was very generous, and they were quite helpful. Okay. Then in the second paragraph, he says that now he is talking about his siblings and how he led his life, what type of lifestyle he was given by his parents. So he says that I was born of many children. Okay? It means that he had got siblings. I was shot with rather undistinguished looks. He uses undistinguished looks because he says that I didn't had looks of my father. His father was quite handsome. His mother was good looking. So he says that I didn't possess any of the good looks of my father. Okay? Born to a tall, handsome parents, and his parents were quite tall and handsome. He says that they used to live at the ancestral house. Ancestral house means the house which is being built by your forefathers or grandparents. And this house was built in the middle of the 19th century. The house was a pakka house, and it was made up of limestone and brick, and this house was situated at Mosque Street in Rameshwaram. Okay. My austere father, austere means strict. He says that his strict father avoided all sorts of luxury. Okay, and he provided his children only with the basic necessities. It means that he provided his children with food, shelter, clothing, and basic education, but he was against all luxury. So Kalam says that I had a very secured childhood. Okay, both materially and emotionally. Emotionally, why? Because his parents were quite supportive towards his children. Materially, because he was given all basic necessity, and that is required for a good living. Now we come to the third stanza. Now he is talking about how he that about the First World War and his earnings. He says, Second World War and his earnings. So he says that Second World War broke out in 1939, and he was merely 8 years old. So he says that an incident. He's talking about an incident that he was quite surprised that how come the price of tamarind seeds grew suddenly erupted in the height in the market. So he used to collect all tamarind seeds and sell it into the market. Okay, and for this he used to get a good amount of 1 anna. Now he again says that his brother-in-law Jalaluddin, he used to tell him stories about war. Okay, first World War, that what was happening in the war. Okay, and that he used to again read it in the newspaper Dinamani. Okay. After that, what happens? That he says that his area, the area where he lived, was totally isolated and was unaffected by the war. Okay. Soon he says that India was forced to join the Allied forces, and since again India was forced to join in the Second World War. So first casualty he says that comes by a through a train accident that happened in at the Rameshwaram station. So now the problem of newspapers now had to be bundled and thrown out from the moving train. Okay. On the Rameshwaram road between Rameshwaram and Dhanushkodi. That, and now his cousin Samshuddin, he needed a person who could help him to catch the bundles. Okay, and for this Kalam was chosen. Okay, and from here and through this job he earned his first wage. Okay, so he says that he recalls the pleasure of remembering one's first earned wage. Now, in the first stanza, every child is born with some inherited characteristic into a specific socio-economic and emotional environment and trained in certain ways by figures of authority. He is trying to say that it is through our parents that we are born with some innate qualities that we inherit from our parents. So he is also saying that I too inherited few qualities from my parents. And what were those qualities? He says that I inherited honesty and self-discipline from my father, and from his mother he inherited goodness, compassion, being compassionate and kind towards others. And so did his 3 brothers and sisters. Okay. Now he is talking about his 3 childhood friends. He says that he has 3 close childhood friends. First was Ramananda Sastri, then Arvindan and Shiva Prakash. All these boys were from orthodox Hindu Brahmin families. Now, as children, they didn't had those feelings about being a Hindu or a Muslim. It means because only in the story, in the narrative, he speaks that in his town there was no difference. Okay, there was no difference among a Hindu or a Muslim. So So now he's saying that Ramanandan Shastri was the son of Pakshi Lakshman Shastri, and this Pakshi Lakshman Shastri was the high priest of the Rameshwaran temple. Later his friend Ramananda Shastri became the head priest of the Rameshwaram temple. Arvindan, he went to the business of arranging transport for visiting pilgrims, and Shiv Prakash became a catering contractor for the Southern Railways. So now he's speaking about the occupations which his friends took up when they grew up. In the fifth stanza, he talks about a cultural unity. He talks about cultural unity, that how in that village there was no difference between a Hindu and a Muslim, how Hindus were equally participating in Muslim festivals and Muslims were equally participating in the Hindu festival. During the annual Sri Sita Ram Kalyanam ceremony, our family used to arrange boats with a special platform for carrying idols of Lord from the temple to the marriage site. So he says that during this festival of Sri Sita Ram Kalyanam, his family used to arrange boats to take the idols to the marriage site. Okay, situated at the middle of the pond called Ram Tirth. Okay, and which was very near to his house. Events from Ramayana and from the life of Prophet were the bedtime stories that his mother and grandmother narrated to his children. So these children, they grew up in a very peaceful cultural environment. Okay. Now in the sixth stanza, he is saying that one day when I was in fifth standard at the Rameshwaram Elementary School, he says that a new teacher came to our class. Okay. And he used to wear a skull cap to mark that he was a Muslim, and he used to sit in the front row with Ramanandan Shastri, who wore a sacred thread around him, which all Brahmins do wear. Now he says that the new teacher, he was not aware of the cultural harmony which existed in that island town. So he was quite surprised, and he just asked Kalam to go and sit at the back, because he could not digest the fact that how could a Muslim sit with a Hindu priest. Seeing this, the children felt very sad, and Kalam was also very sad, and his friend was also very sad. And he says that when he looked at his friend's eyes, he was weeping. Okay. And it had a very strong impression on Kalam's mind. It really hurt him. And he was very much hurt because he saw that his friend was weeping. Okay, his friend was hurt. That hurted him most. In the next stanza, what happens? That after school they went home and told to their respective parents. So Lakshman Shastri, he summoned the teacher, and in the presence of the children, he told the teacher that that teacher should not spread the poison of cultural disharmony. Okay, and if he want to stay there, he has to apologize to the children, and if he don't, he has to leave the school as well as the Rameshwaram island town. Okay, so the teacher, he regretted badly on his behavior, and this incident left him with a strong sense of conviction. Okay, and which reformed this young teacher a lot. This young teacher was reformed a lot by this incident. Now, in the eighth stanza, what's happening? On the whole, the small society of Rameshwaram was very rigid in terms of segregation of different social groups. Okay? There was no segregations. However, my science teacher, Shiva Subramanya Iyer, though an orthodox Brahmin with a very conservative wife, was something of a rebel. Now he's talking about another incident. And through this instance also, he is trying to portray the cultural harmony. So now the science teacher, Shiva Subramanya Iyer, He was also an Orthodox Brahmin, and his wife was very conservative. But he was a rebel. Rebel, a person who is rebellion, okay, who acts against set norms. He did his best to break social barriers so that people from varying backgrounds could mingle easily. He used to spend hours with Kalam, and he would say to Kalam, Kalam, I want you to develop so that you are on par with the highly educated people of the big cities. He used to always coax, he used to always pressurize, force. He used to always uh, uh, took initiative in pampering Kalam by saying that yes, he has all the potentials to stand with the other educated people of the city. In the ninth stanza, so one day what happens that he invites him for a meal, and his wife was totally horrified. She was in fear that how could a Muslim boy could be invited for dinner, and that too in her ritualistic kitchen, which was very pure. And this lady, she refused to serve food to Kalam. So Subramania Iyer, he was perturbed. He was not perturbed. Was not at all disturbed by his wife's behavior because he was aware of it, that this might happen, that it's going to happen. Okay? Nor he was very angry. And what he did, that instead he started serving him food to Kalam. Okay? And he started, and after serving, he sat beside him and ate the food. His wife watched them from behind the kitchen door, and she was wondering that, and she was trying to locate that what is the difference in this Muslim boy, that whether he's having a different pattern of eating, he is a different pattern of picking up plates and everything. So when he was leaving his house, Shiva Subramania Iyer invited me to join him. Again, he invited him for next weekend for dinner. Okay? And when he gave him the invitation to come again for dinner, Kalam became very suspicious. He became hesitant that his wife is showing so much of agitation and he is inviting him for dinner. So he says that once you decide to change the system, such problems have to be confronted. He says that once you want to change society, if you take step to change society, you have to stand up with all these problems. So the next week when Kalam visited, there was a drastic change in the scene. Wife herself was serving food. After that, in the 10th stanza, then the Second World War was over, and Indians were building their own India, and Gandhiji declared freedom and all. So the whole country was filled with it. There was a optimism that now they are fighting for freedom and they will move for the freedom of them. I asked my father for permission to leave Rameshwaram and study at the district headquarters in Ramananthapuram. Now he wants to leave Rameshwaram and wants to go to the district headquarters in Ramanathapuram. The last stanza speaks. He told me as if thinking aloud. Thinking aloud means that his father didn't spoke aloud. He was thinking something in his mind, and that thought was clearly audible to Kalam. And what was his father saying? Abdul, I know you have to go away to grow. He's saying that I know you are going to grow one day, and for your betterment and for your growth, you have to leave us one day. Does the seagull not fly across the sun alone and without a nest? He gives an example of a seagull, that he too has to fly across the sun and leave his nest to look for other things. He quoted Khalil Gibran, to my hesitant mother. And his mother was full of suspicion that how is her child going to stay at some other place without parents, elders. So he tells him and consoles her, tells her and consoles her that your children are not your children. Though you have given birth to your children, but you don't have full rights on them. You cannot control them fully. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. He says that they are children, daughters, and sons of their own life, which is longing to grow, which is standing there to grow. They come through you, but not from you. He's saying that you have given them biological birth, but you cannot control their life in accordance with your own. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts. You can give them love, you can preach them, you can tell them something, and it's totally dependent on them that whether they are interested in taking it, how much they are taking that knowledge from you, and how they are using it. They themselves have enough knowledge to do what they want, for they have their own thoughts. It says that every individual has their own thought. So one should not try to overpower their children or impose their thoughts on them. So children, you can see that how Abdul Kalam was born in such a free-minded, free-spirited family environment. That's why we can see in him that him in his and in his writings and his thoughts that how much free-spirited he was. Okay, with this we come to the end of the explanation of chapter My Childhood.